Linda Brewster had lived at 847 Oakmont Drive in the Riverside Estates subdivision of Portland, Oregon for 3 years, when she made a 911 call that would cost her $35,000 and expose a pattern of harassment that had terrorized one family for 18 months. She was 58 years old, a retired office manager with enough free time to document every perceived violation in her neighborhood, but apparently convinced that her comfort mattered more than her neighbors' right to exist peacefully in their own home. One Thursday afternoon at 2:15 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day, 2024, she saw smoke rising from the Henderson family's backyard, a black family preparing holiday dinner with extended relatives, and decided that a legally permitted, professionally inspected barbecue setup, operated by a fire marshal, constituted a public emergency. What Brewster did next? Ignore clear explanations, dismiss professional credentials, and weaponize emergency services would become a textbook example of how racial bias transforms neighborhood disputes into legal nightmares. But this time, she picked the wrong target. Because Marcus Henderson wasn't just a homeowner, he was the fire marshal who had personally inspected, approved, and signed off on that exact barbecue configuration 13 days earlier. A black man in his early 40s, Marcus Henderson, was standing in his backyard wearing a Kiss the Cook apron and using long tongs to flip turkey legs on a custom-built outdoor grill. His 2 children, Emma, 10, and Jordan, 8, were playing cornhole on the lawn nearby while his wife, Dr. Keisha Henderson, arranged side dishes on a folding table. Extended family members sat in lawn chairs, drinking iced tea and laughing. No violations, no hazards, no illegal activity, just a family celebrating Thanksgiving on their own property with equipment that had passed professional inspection. But Linda Brewster saw them through a filter, so distorted by assumptions about who belongs in affluent neighborhoods, that she couldn't process a black family as legitimate residents deserving the same freedoms she claimed for herself. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Riverside Estates sits in the southwest quadrant of Portland, Oregon, a planned community developed in 2018 with 47 single-family homes, ranging from $650,000 to $1.2 million. The subdivision borders the Willamette River on its eastern edge, giving residents premium water views and hiking trail access. Each home sits on a quarter-acre lot with professional landscaping requirements enforced by a homeowners association that charges $285 in monthly dues. On Thanksgiving Day 2024, the temperature held steady at 48 degrees, under overcast skies, typical of Pacific Northwest autumn. Most families in Riverside Estates were indoors by early afternoon, preparing traditional dinners in climate-controlled kitchens. But at 847 Oakmont Drive, the Henderson family had chosen to celebrate outdoors, continuing a tradition Marcus had maintained since childhood in Georgia, where Thanksgiving always meant grilling in the backyard, regardless of weather. The Henderson home, a craftsman-style 2-story with cedar shake siding and a wraparound porch, occupied the corner lot where Oakmont Drive curved toward the river. Their backyard featured a custom patio area with a built-in outdoor kitchen that Marcus had designed himself, a commercial-grade natural gas grill with separate smoker attachment, granite countertops, and overhead pergola. The setup had cost $18,000 and required professional installation, city permits, and inspection by the Portland Fire Bureau's Commercial Inspection Division. Smoke from the grill drifted upward through the pergola slats, dissipating in the afternoon breeze. The smell of hickory-smoked turkey and barbecue sauce carried across neighboring properties, a scent that some might find appetizing, but that Linda Brewster, whose property line sat 32 feet from the Henderson grill, apparently found intolerable. Next door at 845 Oakmont Drive, Brewster stood at her kitchen window, arms crossed, watching the Henderson family celebrate. She'd been standing there for 23 minutes, according to the timestamp on her later 911 call, not preparing her own Thanksgiving dinner, not spending time with family, just watching her neighbors through the window, phone in hand, waiting for what she would later describe to dispatchers as a legitimate reason to call authorities. The neighborhood was quiet except for the Henderson gathering. children's laughter, adult conversation, the sizzle of meat on the grill, normal sounds of families enjoying a holiday. But in Brewster's mind, somehow, these sounds and smells constituted an emergency worthy of 911 intervention. Marcus Henderson grew up in Brunswick, Georgia, where his father worked as a mechanic and his mother managed a local credit union. He learned to cook on a charcoal grill in his family's backyard, mastering the timing and temperature control that would later serve him well in understanding fire behavior and combustion dynamics. He graduated from Georgia Southern University in 2005 with a degree in fire science, then immediately entered the Fire Academy in Savannah. He spent 6 years as a firefighter with Chatham County Fire Department, responding to structure fires, vehicle accidents, and medical emergencies. In 2011, he transferred to the Fire Prevention Division, completing additional certification as a fire inspector. He earned his Certified Fire Protection Specialist credential from the National Fire Protection Association in 2013. In 2016, Marcus relocated to Portland, when his wife, Dr. Keisha Henderson, accepted a position as a pediatrician with Legacy Emmanuel Medical Center. He joined the Portland Fire Bureau as a fire inspector, quickly advancing through the ranks based on his technical knowledge and meticulous attention to code compliance. In 2020, he was promoted to Fire Marshal, overseeing the Commercial Inspection Division, responsible for reviewing construction plans, conducting fire safety inspections, and enforcing fire codes across the city's commercial and multi-family residential properties. As Fire Marshal, Marcus reviewed approximately 200 plans per month and conducted 50 to 70 on-site inspections weekly. His division was responsible for everything from nightclub capacity limits to restaurant hood suppression systems to outdoor cooking equipment in commercial settings. He knew the Oregon Fire Code, the International Fire Code, and NFPA standards better than most people know their own phone numbers. In October 2024, Marcus decided to upgrade his backyard cooking area. He'd been using a standard propane grill for years, but with extended family visiting more frequently and his passion for barbecue growing, he wanted something more substantial. He designed a custom outdoor kitchen featuring a commercial-grade natural gas grill, the same model used in professional restaurant settings, connected to the home's natural gas line with proper shut-off valves, pressure regulators, and safety disconnects. Because Marcus understood code requirements, he knew the installation required permits. He submitted plans to the Portland Bureau of Development Services on October 3rd, paying the $428 permit fee. The plans showed the grill's specifications, gas line routing, clearance distances from the home's structure and property lines, and ventilation considerations. The permit was approved on October 8th. The installation took 3 days. A licensed plumber ran the natural gas line. A certified contractor built the pergola structure with fire-resistant materials. Marcus personally installed the grill, following manufacturer specifications and maintaining 18 inches of clearance on all sides as required by code. On October 21st at 10:30 a.m., Fire Inspector Jennifer Kwan from Marcus's own division arrived to conduct the final inspection. She verified gas line installation, checked pressure readings, confirmed clearances, tested the automatic shutoff valve, and reviewed the grill's BTU output against ventilation requirements. The setup passed inspection. Kwan signed off on the permit, and Marcus received the green tag, official approval to operate the equipment. He'd done everything by the book: permits, professional installation, code compliance, final inspection. Because that's what Marcus did. He followed rules. He enforced standards. He understood that fire safety wasn't optional, it was essential. On Thanksgiving morning, Marcus started prepping at 8 a.m. He'd brined 2 15-pound turkeys overnight, prepared a dry rub for pork ribs, and mixed his signature barbecue sauce, a recipe his grandmother had passed down that combined Georgia red clay sweetness with Carolina vinegar tang. The grill was lit by 9:30 a.m., temperature stabilized at 275 degrees for slow smoking by 10:15 a.m. By 2 p.m., the turkeys were reaching target internal temperature. Extended family had arrived: Keisha's parents from Seattle, Marcus's brother from Eugene, cousins from across Portland. 15 people total, gathering in the backyard to celebrate Thanksgiving the way the Henderson family always had, with food, family, and the smell of hickory smoke in the air. This was Marcus's home, his property, his legally permitted, professionally inspected, code-compliant cooking equipment, and he was operating it exactly as designed, exactly as approved, exactly as allowed by every relevant regulation. But none of that would matter to Linda Brewster. Linda Brewster moved to 845 Oakmont Drive in January 2022, after retiring from a 32-year career as an office manager for a medical supply distribution company. She'd sold her previous home in Beaverton for $490,000 and bought into Riverside Estates for $715,000, stretching her retirement savings to afford what she considered a more appropriate neighborhood. From the beginning, Brewster made it clear she had specific expectations about how Riverside Estates should operate. At the March 2022 Homeowners Association meeting, she proposed new rules limiting outdoor music after 6 p.m., restricting holiday decorations to traditional themes, and requiring advance written notice for any gathering exceeding 10 people. The HOA board, citing existing noise ordinances and constitutional concerns, declined to adopt her proposals. In May 2022, Brewster filed her first complaint to the HOA about the Henderson family. Subject: excessive noise from children playing in yard. The complaint cited constant shouting and screaming that disturbed her peace between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. on weekdays. The HOA board reviewed the complaint, noted that children playing outdoors during afternoon hours constituted normal residential activity, and took no action. The pattern had begun. June 2022, complaint to HOA about Henderson family's lawn maintenance schedule. Brewster claimed their lawn service arrived too early at 8 a.m. on Saturdays, violating her expectation of weekend quiet. The HOA noted that 8 a.m. fell within permitted hours for lawn equipment operation. August 2022, complaint to Portland Police non-emergency line about the Henderson family's car parking. Brewster reported that visitors to the Henderson home were parking on the street, blocking her view. Officers responded, confirmed all vehicles were legally parked on public streets, and advised Brewster that street parking was permitted. October 2022, complaint to HOA about Halloween decorations at the Henderson home. Brewster objected to excessive and inappropriate decorations, specifically citing inflatable figures and string lights. Photos she submitted showed standard Halloween decorations, a 12-foot inflatable ghost, orange lights along the porch, carved pumpkins. The HOA took no action. December 2022, complaint to City Code Enforcement about holiday lights at the Henderson home. Brewster claimed the lights created light pollution that penetrated her windows. A code enforcement officer visited, found no violations, and closed the complaint. February 2023, complaint to HOA about the Henderson family's garbage bins. Brewster reported that bins were placed at the curb too early and retrieved too late, though surveillance footage from a neighbor showed the Hendersons placing bins out the evening before pickup and retrieving them the evening of pickup, standard practice. April 2023, complaint to police about the Henderson family's visitors. Brewster called the non-emergency line to report suspicious activity, specifically citing multiple cars arriving at the Henderson home on a Saturday afternoon. Officers responded to what was a children's birthday party. No violations found. 7 complaints in 18 months. Every single one targeting the Henderson family. Every single one citing normal residential activities. Children playing, lawn maintenance, holiday decorations, visitor parking, birthday parties. Every single one dismissed or closed without action. The pattern was clear. The documentation was extensive, and every complaint told the same story. Linda Brewster believed the Henderson family didn't belong in Riverside Estates, and she was determined to use any available mechanism, HOA rules, code enforcement, police, to make their lives difficult enough that they might leave. But here's what made her Thanksgiving 911 call particularly egregious. Brewster knew Marcus was a fire marshal. She'd seen his Portland Fire Bureau vehicle parked in his driveway. She'd received a notice about his outdoor kitchen permit when the city mailed courtesy notifications to adjacent property owners. She'd had 18 months to learn that the Henderson family wasn't violating rules. They were following them meticulously. This is where assumptions become accusations. This is where discomfort becomes harassment. This is where a woman with enough time to document every perceived slight against her sensibilities decided that a black family celebrating Thanksgiving constituted an emergency worthy of 911 intervention. At 2:15 p.m., Linda Brewster dialed 911. The call recording, later obtained through public records request, captured the following exchange. 911, dispatcher? 911, what's your emergency? Brewster, yes. I need to report a fire hazard at my neighbor's property. There's excessive smoke coming from their backyard, and it's crossing onto my property. Dispatcher, is there an active structure fire? Can you see flames? Brewster, no, it's some kind of outdoor fire. They're cooking something, but the smoke is unbearable. Dispatcher, so they're using a barbecue grill? Brewster, I don't know what they're using. All I know is there's smoke everywhere and it's a hazard. Dispatcher, I'm going to send a fire inspector to assess the situation. What's the address? Brewster, 847 Oakmont Drive. And I want this documented. This has been an ongoing issue with this family. The dispatcher, following protocol, radioed Fire Inspector Jennifer Kwan, who happened to be completing another inspection 3 miles away. Kwan recognized the address immediately. She'd inspected the Henderson outdoor kitchen just 34 days earlier. At 2:18 p.m., before any fire personnel arrived, Linda Brewster walked from her property to the Henderson backyard. She stood at the edge of their patio, arms crossed, and delivered her opening line. You need to put that fire out right now. Marcus Henderson turned from the grill, tongs still in hand, genuinely confused about what was happening. His wife, Keisha, looked up from the folding table where she'd been arranging side dishes. Their children stopped playing cornhole. Extended family members seated in lawn chairs went quiet. Ma'am, it's a barbecue grill. We're making Thanksgiving dinner. Brewster stepped closer to the grill, pointing at the smoke rising from the turkey. I don't care what you call it. That smoke is a fire hazard and a public nuisance. Marcus set down his tongs. He dealt with enough difficult people in his professional life to recognize when someone wasn't interested in reason. But he tried anyway. This is a commercial-grade outdoor grill. It's been inspected and approved for residential use. Brewster's voice rose, loud enough that neighbors 2 houses away would later report hearing the confrontation. I've called the fire department. They're on their way. Marcus's mother-in-law, Patricia Williams, approached from her lawn chair. Excuse me, but we're having a private family gathering. You're on our property. Brewster ignored her completely, keeping her focus on Marcus. I am the fire department. I'm Fire Marshal Marcus Henderson. I personally approved this setup 2 weeks ago. This is where bias becomes impenetrable. This is where professional credentials, legal permits, and documented compliance become irrelevant because the person challenging them has already decided they don't matter. Brewster's response came without hesitation. I don't care if you're the fire chief. That smoke is crossing into my property, and I want it stopped now. Marcus's brother, Derek Henderson, who'd been recording the interaction on his phone since Brewster entered the backyard, spoke up. You're being recorded, ma'am. You might want to reconsider how you're handling this. Brewster turned toward Derek. Are you threatening me? I'll call the police too. Keisha Henderson stepped between Brewster and her family, her voice calm but firm, the same voice she used in her pediatric practice when dealing with panicked parents. Mrs. Brewster, you need to leave our property right now. We've done nothing wrong. Everything here is legal and permitted. But you're trespassing. Brewster didn't move. Instead, she pulled out her phone and took photos of the grill, the pergola, the gathered family. I'm documenting everything. The fire department will shut this down. At 2:23 p.m., Fire Inspector Jennifer Kwan arrived in her marked Portland Fire Bureau SUV. She parked on the street, grabbed her inspection clipboard, and approached the Henderson property. She could see Linda Brewster standing in the backyard, phone raised, still taking photos. She could see Marcus Henderson standing near his grill, looking frustrated but controlled. And she could see approximately 15 people gathered in the backyard, watching this confrontation unfold. Kwan entered through the side gate and addressed the group. Fire Bureau. I received a call about smoke concerns. Who's the homeowner here? Marcus raised his hand, relief crossing his face. Inspector Kwan, good to see you again. Kwan recognized Marcus immediately. She glanced at the grill setup, the same configuration she'd inspected and approved on October 21st. Fire Marshal Henderson. This is the outdoor kitchen we inspected last month, correct? That's correct. Same equipment, same configuration, operating within approved parameters. Brewster interrupted. I'm the one who called. That smoke has been pouring into my yard for hours. This is a fire hazard and a nuisance. Kwan turned to Brewster. Professional but direct. Ma'am, I inspected this installation myself. It's code compliant, properly permitted, and operating safely. What you're seeing is normal smoke from food being cooked on a barbecue grill. Brewster's voice rose again. I don't care what you inspected. I want this stopped. That smoke is affecting my property and my health. Kwan pulled out her phone and accessed the Portland Fire Bureau's permit database. She showed Brewster the screen, the green tag approval for 847 Oakmont Drive, dated October 21st, 2024, signed by Inspector J. Kwan. This equipment has been inspected and approved by the Portland Fire Bureau. The homeowner has every right to use it. There's no fire hazard here. There's no code violation. There's just a family cooking Thanksgiving dinner on their own property, with equipment that passed professional inspection. Brewster stared at the screen, then at Kwan, then at Marcus. This is unacceptable. I'm filing a complaint with your department. Kwan's response was measured but firm. You're welcome to file a complaint. But I'm telling you right now, as the inspector who personally approved this setup, there's no violation here. The smoke you're experiencing is a normal byproduct of outdoor cooking. It's not excessive, it's not a hazard, and it doesn't violate any code or ordinance. Then I'll call the police. Kwan sighed, her patience clearly thinning. Ma'am, calling the police won't change the fact that this equipment is legal and approved. What you're doing right now is harassing your neighbors on Thanksgiving. I'd suggest you return to your own property and let this family enjoy their holiday. Brewster's face flushed red. She turned toward Marcus. This isn't over. I know my rights. She turned and walked back toward her own property, phone still in hand. The confrontation lasted 11 minutes. A confrontation that never should have happened. A confrontation based entirely on Linda Brewster's refusal to accept that her black neighbors had the same rights she claimed for herself. Fire Inspector Jennifer Kwan stayed on the Henderson property for another 15 minutes, not because there was anything to inspect. She knew the setup was compliant, but because she wanted to document everything that had just occurred. She took photos of the grill configuration, confirmed it matched the approved permit specifications, and measured clearance distances from property lines. She noted that smoke dissipation was normal for the equipment's BTU output and ambient wind conditions. She recorded outdoor temperature, wind speed, and grill operating temperature. Every measurement confirmed what she already knew. The Henderson setup was operating safely and legally. At 2:41 p.m., Fire Chief Robert Yamamoto arrived. Kwan had called him while documenting the scene, explaining the situation and suggesting he should come personally, given that one of his fire marshals was being harassed on his own property. Yamamoto had been with Portland Fire Bureau for 28 years, serving as fire chief since 2019. He'd worked directly with Marcus for 4 years and considered him one of the most competent fire safety professionals in the department. Yamamoto approached Marcus, extending his hand. Marcus, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Marcus shook his hand, visible relief on his face. Chief, thanks for coming. Yamamoto surveyed the backyard setup, then turned to the gathered family. I understand this has been a difficult afternoon. I want everyone here to know that Fire Marshal Henderson's outdoor cooking setup has been properly permitted, professionally inspected, and is operating in full compliance with all applicable codes. No one from the Fire Bureau will be returning here to address complaints about this equipment, because there's nothing to address. This equipment is legal, period. He turned back to Marcus. Inspector Kwan briefed me on the neighbor's history of complaints against your family. I want you to know that we're documenting this incident thoroughly. If your neighbor continues to use our department to harass you, we'll be referring the matter to City Legal for potential charges of filing false reports. Keisha Henderson approached Yamamoto. Chief, I appreciate you coming here, But this has been going on for almost 2 years. We've been patient. We've followed every rule. We've done everything right. And she just keeps coming after us." Yamamoto nodded. "I understand. And I'm telling you that this ends now, at least as far as fire code complaints are concerned. We're going to send a formal letter to your neighbor explaining that future calls about this equipment will be considered harassment and may result in penalties." He pulled out his business card and handed it to Marcus. "If she contacts you directly again, call me. If she files another complaint with our department, call me. If she escalates this in any way, call me. You have the full support of Portland Fire Bureau." At 3:02 p.m., Yamamoto and Kwan left the Henderson property. But before they left, Kwan pulled Marcus aside. "I've been a fire inspector for 9 years. I've seen all kinds of disputes over outdoor cooking. Fire pits, chimneys, you name it. But I've never seen anything like this. Your neighbor isn't concerned about fire safety. She's concerned about you. And that's not a fire code issue. That's something else entirely." Marcus nodded. "I know. We've known for 18 months. We just kept hoping she'd stop." Kwan's response was direct. "Document everything. Keep every email, every text, every interaction. Because this isn't going to stop with a letter from the fire chief. This is going to escalate. And when it does, you'll need that documentation." She was right. The Henderson family tried to salvage their Thanksgiving celebration. The turkey was finished. The sides were ready. Extended family was there, but the afternoon had been poisoned by Linda Brewster's confrontation. Children who'd been laughing and playing were now subdued. Adults who'd been relaxed and festive were now tense. The joy had been sucked out of the day. At 4:47 p.m., while the Henderson family was eating dinner, Linda Brewster called 911 again. This time, she reported threatening behavior by the Henderson family. The call recording captured her claim that Marcus and his relatives had surrounded her in her own yard and made aggressive statements. The dispatcher, reviewing the earlier call and Fire Bureau response, noted the inconsistency. Brewster had been on the Henderson property during the previous incident, not her own, but sent a patrol officer to investigate. Officer Ryan Chen arrived at 5:03 p.m. He spoke first with Brewster, who claimed she'd been intimidated and harassed by her neighbors. She showed him the photos she'd taken of the Henderson backyard, pointing out the smoke, the grill, the gathered family as if these constituted evidence of wrongdoing. Chen then walked to the Henderson property. Marcus met him at the front door, explained the day's events, and showed him Inspector Kwan's documentation and Fire Chief Yamamoto's business card. Chen reviewed everything, then returned to his patrol car and made 2 calls, one to Fire Inspector Kwan to confirm her account, one to his sergeant to request guidance. At 5:28 p.m., Chen returned to Brewster's property with his sergeant, Sergeant Michelle Torres. Torres had reviewed the incident history. 7 prior complaints against the Henderson family, all dismissed. She'd read the 911 call transcripts. She'd spoken with the Fire Bureau. And she'd reached a conclusion. "Ms. Brewster, I've reviewed the situation. Your neighbors are operating legal equipment on their own property. They haven't threatened you. They haven't harassed you. What you're describing as threatening behavior appears to be them asking you to leave their property after you entered without permission. That's not a crime. That's them exercising their rights as homeowners," Brewster protested. "They're creating a nuisance. The smoke is unbearable. I have rights too." Sergeant Torres's response was direct and unambiguous. "Your rights don't include filing false police reports or using emergency services to harass your neighbors. I'm advising you right now that if you make another call about this situation without evidence of an actual crime or emergency, you could face charges for misuse of 911. Do you understand?" Brewster stared at Torres, apparently shocked that an officer wasn't supporting her complaint. "You're taking their side?" Torres held up her hand. "I'm not taking sides. I'm explaining the law. Your neighbors are not violating any laws or ordinances. You are welcome to be upset about smoke from a barbecue grill. But being upset doesn't make it illegal. It doesn't make it an emergency. And it doesn't justify repeated false reports." After Torres and Chen left, Derek Henderson, who'd recorded the initial confrontation, uploaded the video to social media. He posted it to Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok with a caption. "My brother is a fire marshal. He got permits, passed inspection, did everything legally. His neighbor called 911 on Thanksgiving because she doesn't like seeing our black family in her neighborhood." This is America in 2024. The video went viral within hours. By Friday morning, it had 2.3 million views across platforms. By Saturday, local news outlets were covering the story. By Sunday, national outlets had picked it up. The Henderson family provided statements to reporters explaining the 18-month pattern of harassment. The Portland Fire Bureau released Inspector Kwan's documentation, confirming the outdoor kitchen's compliance. The HOA provided records of Brewster's 7 complaints. Portland police released the 911 call recordings, which clearly demonstrated Brewster's escalating pattern of false reports. Public reaction was swift and unambiguous. Comments flooded social media. "This woman called 911 on a fire marshal's barbecue grill. Let that sink in. 18 months of harassment, 7 complaints, 0 violations. But sure, tell me racism doesn't exist." Imagine being so threatened by a black family that you call 911 on Thanksgiving because they're grilling turkey. The Henderson family didn't want money. They wanted peace. They wanted to live in their home without constant surveillance and harassment. They wanted their children to play in the yard without their neighbor documenting every moment. They wanted what every family in Riverside Estates took for granted, the right to exist without justification. But Linda Brewster had escalated the situation beyond the point where peace was possible. She'd filed false reports. She'd weaponized emergency services. She'd harassed a family for 18 months based on nothing more than her discomfort with their presence. On December 3, 2024, the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office filed charges against Linda Brewster. 1 count of filing a false police report, a Class A misdemeanor, and 1 count of misuse of 911 services, a violation. The charges carried potential penalties of up to 1 year in jail and $6,250 in fines. Brewster hired an attorney who immediately issued a statement claiming his client had been acting in good faith, based on legitimate concerns about smoke and fire safety. The statement ignored the Fire Bureau's documentation. It ignored the permitted and inspected equipment. It ignored the 18-month pattern of dismissed complaints. On January 14, 2025, Brewster accepted a plea agreement to avoid trial. She pleaded no contest to both charges. The judge sentenced her to 18 months of probation, 60 hours of community service, and ordered her to pay $35,000 in restitution to the Henderson family to cover legal fees, the cost of installing security cameras to document future harassment, and compensation for emotional distress. The judge's statement from the bench left no ambiguity about his view of Brewster's conduct. "Ms. Brewster, you have abused emergency services, harassed your neighbors, and wasted public resources on complaints that had no basis in fact or law. Your pattern of behavior suggests not legitimate concerns about safety or code compliance, but rather an unwillingness to accept that your black neighbors have the same rights to enjoy their property as you claim for yourself. This court will not tolerate the weaponization of 911 or city services to target families based on race. Your probation terms include mandatory bias awareness counseling, and I am warning you that any further harassment of the Henderson family will result in jail time." Linda Brewster paid the $35,000 fine on January 28, 2025. She has not spoken publicly about the incident since her sentencing. She still lives at 845 Oakmont Drive, 32 feet from the Henderson family's outdoor kitchen. Marcus and Keisha Henderson used a portion of the restitution money to install 6 security cameras covering their property's perimeter. They installed motion-activated lighting. They documented every interaction with Brewster through video and written logs, because that's what black families in affluent neighborhoods learn to do. Document everything, because one day you'll need proof that you weren't the problem. Brewster's career is over, her reputation destroyed by her own documented pattern of harassment. The judge imposed $35,000 in consequences. That's accountability. But money doesn't restore the Henderson family's sense of safety in their own home. It doesn't erase their children's memories of police cars in the driveway on Thanksgiving. It doesn't undo the message sent to every black family in Riverside Estates. Your presence here is provisional, subject to challenge, never quite legitimate enough. Do you think neighbors who file false 911 calls based on racial bias should face mandatory jail time instead of probation? Drop your answer below. The Henderson family declined to appear at Brewster's sentencing hearing. Instead, they submitted a written statement, which the judge read into the court record. Portions of that statement capture the emotional toll of 18 months of harassment. From the Henderson family statement, January 14, 2025. We moved to Riverside Estates because we believed it would be a safe place to raise our children. We saved for years to afford this neighborhood. We followed every rule, paid every fee, respected every regulation. Marcus inspected our own outdoor kitchen setup with the same rigor he applies to commercial properties, because he understands that cutting corners on fire safety isn't acceptable. We've watched our neighbor document our children playing in the yard. We've seen her photograph our guests arriving for birthdays and holidays. We've received notices about complaints we knew had no merit, but each one required time to respond, documentation to provide, stress to manage. Our daughter Emma asked us last month if we did something wrong. She's 10 years old. She shouldn't have to question whether her family deserves to live in our own home, but that's what 18 months of harassment does. It makes children doubt their right to exist in spaces their parents worked so hard to access. Marcus served his community for 15 years as a firefighter and fire safety professional. He's saved lives. He's prevented injuries. He's enforced codes that keep people safe. And on Thanksgiving 2024, his neighbor called 911 on him for operating equipment he'd personally inspected and approved. Not because the equipment was dangerous, but because she couldn't accept that a black family belonged in her neighborhood. We don't want revenge. We want what we bought this house for: peace. We want to celebrate holidays without police intervention. We want our children to play outside without surveillance. We want to exist in our home without constant justification. The financial penalty imposed today is appropriate, but no amount of money restores what was taken from us: our sense of belonging, our children's innocence, our belief that following every rule would be enough. We're grateful to Fire Inspector Kwan and Fire Chief Yamamoto for their support. We're grateful to the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office for taking this seriously. We're grateful to our community members who've reached out to express solidarity. But we're also exhausted, because we know this case isn't unique. We know other black families face similar harassment in neighborhoods, where their presence is questioned, their credentials are dismissed, their rights are conditional. We're staying in our home. We're not leaving Riverside Estates, because leaving would send a message to our children that when people like Linda Brewster target you, you run. We won't teach our kids that lesson. We'll teach them what we've always taught them: stand firm, document everything, trust that eventually justice matters. But justice delayed is justice denied. And we've been denied peace in our own home for 18 months while waiting for systems to recognize what we've known all along. This wasn't about smoke. It was never about smoke. It was about the color of our skin and the assumption that we didn't belong. Should homeowners who document patterns of racial harassment receive automatic civil rights protections and expedited legal remedies? Let me know what you think. The Henderson case exposes something that polite society often prefers to ignore: the weaponization of rules against people whose presence makes others uncomfortable. Linda Brewster didn't invent a new form of racism. She deployed an old one using ostensibly neutral systems: HOAs, code enforcement, police, fire departments, to target people she believed didn't belong. She filed complaints about children playing, holiday decorations, visitor parking, lawn maintenance schedules, normal activities that occur in every suburban neighborhood every single day. But when a black family engages in these activities, suddenly they become violations worthy of official intervention. Here's what makes this particularly insidious. Brewster could claim, and her attorney did claim, that her complaints weren't about race. They were about smoke, noise, parking, property values. She could point to HOA bylaws, city ordinances, and community standards. She could present herself as a concerned neighbor exercising her right to file legitimate complaints. But 7 complaints in 18 months, all targeting one family, all dismissed, isn't concern. That's a pattern. And the system initially enabled that pattern. The HOA reviewed her complaints and closed them, but didn't warn her against continued harassment. Code enforcement responded to her calls, found no violations, but didn't flag the repeated targeting. Police answered her 911 calls, confirmed no crimes occurred, but didn't tell her that weaponizing emergency services constitutes abuse. Each individual complaint, viewed in isolation, might seem innocuous. Frustrated neighbor files complaint. Authorities investigate. No violation found. Case closed. But stack them up, 7 complaints, 18 months, 1 family, 0 violations, and the pattern becomes undeniable. This is where assumptions become accusations. This is where comfort becomes entitlement. This is where someone decides that their right to not see smoke from a neighbor's Thanksgiving barbecue supersedes that neighbor's right to celebrate a holiday on their own property with legally permitted equipment. The real question is, what changes now? Because the Henderson case isn't an outlier. It's a template. Black families moving into predominantly white neighborhoods face this pattern repeatedly. Complaints about noise when they host gatherings. Questions about whether they really live there when they're in their own driveways. Suspicion cast on their visitors. Challenges to their right to use community amenities. Death by 1,000 cuts disguised as community standards. And here's the structural problem. The systems designed to enforce rules don't distinguish between legitimate complaints and harassment disguised as rule enforcement. HOAs process paperwork. Code enforcement responds to calls. Police investigate reports. Each entity operates independently, rarely communicating, almost never tracking patterns that span multiple departments. 7 complaints in 18 months. That information existed in 3 different systems: HOA records, city code enforcement, police dispatch logs. But no one connected the dots until Derek Henderson's video went viral and forced public attention on Linda Brewster's behavior. The Henderson family had to endure 18 months of harassment, had to document every incident, had to hire attorneys, had to go public with their story, all to achieve what should have been automatic: recognition that they were being targeted and that such targeting is illegal. Marcus Henderson did everything right: permits, inspections, code compliance, professional credentials. None of it mattered to Linda Brewster, because what she objected to wasn't violations. It was his presence. The $35,000 fine sends a message. Weaponizing emergency services has consequences. But that message only reaches people who get caught, prosecuted, and held accountable. How many Linda Brewsters are operating in neighborhoods across America right now, filing complaints, making calls, documenting their neighbors, secure in the knowledge that they probably won't face consequences? The Henderson family stayed in their home. Good for them. But they shouldn't have had to fight for 18 months to enjoy rights that their white neighbors take for granted. They shouldn't have had to install security cameras to protect themselves from harassment. They shouldn't have had to explain to their 10-year-old daughter that some people don't think they belong in their own neighborhood. Do we finally acknowledge that neutral systems, HOAs, code enforcement, police, become weapons when deployed with bias? Do we finally recognize that following every rule, obtaining every permit, achieving every credential isn't enough when the real objection is to your existence in spaces others consider theirs? Because if we don't fix the culture that enables Linda Brewsters to harass families for 18 months before facing consequences, if we don't create mechanisms that identify and stop targeting patterns before they traumatize families, if we don't teach our children that legal residence and proper paperwork should be sufficient proof of belonging, then we're just waiting for the next viral video, the next black family forced to defend their right to celebrate Thanksgiving in their own backyard, the next Marcus Henderson who has to explain to authorities that yes, he really is qualified to operate equipment he personally inspected and approved. Comment if you believe this should be law. Any person who files 3 or more complaints against the same family within 24 months, where 0 violations are found, faces automatic investigation for harassment and potential civil rights violations. And if you think these stories need to be told, If you believe accountability starts with awareness, if you understand that change requires pressure, then hit that subscribe button. We're not stopping. We're going to keep exposing these patterns. We're going to keep demanding better. We're going to keep fighting for families like the Hendersons, who shouldn't have to fight just to live in peace. This isn't just about one racist neighbor or one black family forced to defend their Thanksgiving celebration. It's about all of us and the communities we choose to accept or the justice we're willing to demand.